Hi, my dear students. Today in English literature, we are going to learn our next lesson, lesson number 3, that is a polar explorer. This is an interesting lesson with the theme of travel, and it's a biography of a traveler. And in the language part, we will be learning about sentences, parts of speech, and imaginative writing. So, first, let's see what is the meaning of biography. Bio means life and graphy means I write. So, biography is a written account of someone's life and it contains a lot of details about a person and it is always written by another person. Now, what is autobiography? Auto means self, bio means life, and graphy means I write, and it is usually written by the person themselves. But this lesson is a biography. Polar exploration is the process of exploration of the poles, north and south poles of Earth. And in this lesson, we are going to learn about a polar explorer, a person who has reached the north and south pole first. He is none other than Roald Amundsen, who was born in Norway in 1872. As a child, he read about famous British explorers. He joined as many sports teams as he could and slept with his windows wide open despite the freezing cold Norwegian winters so that he would be fit, strong, and ready if he got a chance to be an explorer. Amundsen's family worked in the shipping industry, but his mother wanted him to avoid the dangers of the life at sea, so she encouraged him to become a doctor. He obeyed his mother's wishes while continuing to read more about explorers because his ambition was to become an explorer. When he was 21 years old, his mother died, and Amundsen left university and he began his life as an explorer. Some of his achievements are: he was the first to pass through the Northwest Passage in Arctic Ocean. He was in the first expedition to reach the South Pole on 14 December 1911. Now, what do you understand by expedition? It is the journey by a group of people with a clear aim to explore. In 1926, he led a successful expedition to North Pole and he is recognized as the first person to have reached the South and North Pole, means both the poles. In early expeditions, Amundsen was a part of the crew. He watched, listened, and learned some useful skills. Once, a ship trapped in ice, he observed how the doctor's hunting skills provided the crew with fresh meat and kept them free from scurvy. Scurvy is a disease caused by the lack of vitamin C. It can lead to illness, loss of teeth, and death from bleeding. When he was 28 years old, Amundsen became the leader of expeditions with his own ship, Drova. The ship is still on display at the Fram Museum in Oslo. Okay, now let's see some informations about South and North Pole. South Pole is on the continent of Antarctica, 1300 kilometers from the sea, and the land is covered in ice and snow, 2700 meters thick. There is no sunlight from March to September and the sun stays on the horizon from September to March. There is no native plants or animals, that is the flora and fauna. Colder than the North Pole, and scientists live in US Amundsen Scott Ice Station all year round. Now, let's see a few information about North Pole. North Pole is in the middle of Arctic Ocean, which is a mass of shifting sea ice. The ice cap is shrinking due to climate change. No sunlight from September to March. The sun rises in March and sets in September. Imagine if we are there, what could we do? Seals have been spotted at the North Pole, and polar bears and Arctic foxes are sometimes seen nearby. Warmer than the South Pole, but still very cold. So we can't even expect also to live there. And the nearest inhabited land is a Canadian town which is 817 kilometers away from the North Pole. From 1903 to 1906, Amundsen took a crew of 6 men on Jova on an expedition to find a route through the Northwest Passage. The Northwest Passage is the name of the sea route through the Arctic Ocean from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Okay, due to the very cold temperatures, the area is frozen over most of the time for a short while. Each year the ice around the land in the north of Canada can break up enough to allow vessels through. Doha was small enough to pass through these waters and over the shallow areas that would have wrecked bigger ships. During the winters, when the ship was frozen into ice, the crew watched the Inuit people who lived there and picked up important Arctic survival skills such as using dogs to travel by sledge. These were useful on later expeditions to the North Pole. Amundsen also stocked up on furs to wear, which were much warmer than the woolen clothes he had. Getting to the North Pole was a challenge for them. First, Amundsen tried to go by ship, but it got stuck in ice. He had to think of another way to achieve his goal and decided to travel by plane. The first attempt in 1925 was dangerous and unsuccessful. Finally, in 1926, Amundsen made it to the North Pole. Three other people claim separately to have got to the North Pole before Amundsen, but all of these have been disputed. Amundsen's skills and perseverance made him the first person to be able to claim that he had been to both the poles. He said that his success came from the proper preparation and having the appropriate equipment. He said, "Victory awaits him who has everything in order." Amundsen wrote about his experiences in his autobiography, My Life as an Explorer. Autobiography is something which a person writes about his own experiences. Okay, let's read this. One day, two of the boys and I were standing on the deck when one of them exclaimed, "There is a caribou." He pointed to a small black object just on the skyline of one of the encircling hills. The other man, who had the best vision of the three, looked steadfastly at the black object for a moment and then returned to his companion and said, "That caribou walks on two legs." Sure enough, close scrutiny confirmed his quick perception that this was not a caribou but an Eskimo. Some other two-legged caribous joined the first until 5 figures were outlined against the sky. Then they advanced towards us in a body. I sent the two boys for their rifles, and then the three of us advanced to meet them. I was in the lead, and behind me came my little army of two. As the Eskimos neared us, we could see they were all armed with bows and arrows. This began to look like a ticklish situation. We had no way of knowing whether their intentions were friendly or hostile. Certainly, they were equipped for war. However, there were nothing to do but meet them face to face. The two parties proceeded to within about 15 paces and then halted. I then turned to my army and instructed them ostentatiously to throw their rifles on the ground. I then turned to the Eskimos. Their leader, seeing the specific move, imitated it by turning to his followers and uttering a command. They obeyed by throwing their bows and arrows on the ground. I was unarmed and advanced towards them. The Eskimo leader also came out alone. It is remarkable how accurately two men can communicate who do not speak a word of common language and whose whole experience of life seems utterly separated from each other's. Expressions of the face, nods and shakes of the head, gestures and tones of the voice convey meaning with astonishing accuracy. By these means, I quickly convinced the Eskimo leader that I wished to be his friend, and he reciprocated my wish. Soon we were all friendly, and I invited them down to our ship. So this was a short note from his autobiography. In June 1928, aged 55, Amundsen was traveling in a plane on a rescue mission when it disappeared. Amundsen and the rest of the crew were never seen again. So, this is in brief the biography of a polar explorer. Now, let's go to the textbook exercises part. Question answers as usual. Please refer your notes, and there is true or false which you can solve yourself. For the first one, I'll solve for you. Scurvy is caused by the lack of vitamin C, which is true. So the remaining ones you can solve it yourself. And look at the two fact files about the poles. Write 4 sentences in which you compare the poles. The South Pole is colder than the North Pole. Yes, that's true. South Pole is more colder. Okay, and there are so many other facts given over there. Already we have discussed it. For example, there is no sunlight from March to September in the South Pole, but in North Pole it is September to March. Same way you can add the remaining. Okay, let's go to next page now. Here they are asking you to look at the extract from Amundsen's book and find out what these words mean, and you have to use that in a sentence. For example, steadfastly. What is the meaning of steadfastly? Means strongly without stopping. So same way you need to find out the meanings of all the words given here, and you need to use that in a sentence. Now the next one, you have learned these proverbs. Can you complete them? The early bird dash catches the worm. Look before you leap, and learn to walk before you run, and so remaining ones you can complete. Okay, and choose one of the proverb and explain its meaning to the class. This we will have to do as a group activity when we meet in the class, and you can go for a story or an anecdote to illustrate the meaning also. Now the next part is parts of speech. Okay, what is the meaning of this? This means each word in a sentence performs its function. Okay, we say that a word functions according to the part of speech it is. For example, when I say Raj is happy, here Raj is a noun. You cannot say Raj as a verb. Same way, there are 8 parts of speech. And this is something which you have already studied, so we can have a quick revision for the same. So you know that the first one is noun, which is the name of a person, place or a thing. And adjective, something which describes the noun or a pronoun. And pronoun is something which stands in place of a noun. For example, he or she, it, who, and all. And verb is an action word or a state of being. And adverb, that is something which describes or adds to the meaning of a verb. For example, when I say you write neatly, write is the verb here and neatly will be the adverb. And also you have studied the different types of adverbs also. And the next part is conjunction, that is it joins together the words or parts of a sentence. For example, and, or, but. Next is preposition, that is it shows the relation between two nouns or pronouns like in, at, on, under. So when I say that I kept the book on the table, so on the table, book is on the table, so book and table is connected by on, the preposition. And interjection is something which expresses the feelings or emotion like oh, alas, hooray, and so many are there. Now let's look at the next exercise, that is underlined words. You need to identify what part it is. Okay, which parts of speech it belongs to. I'll be solving the first one and the remaining your assignment. Okay, first one, A. The yellow snake crawled out of a hole. Here, the yellow snake. Snake is the noun and yellow is an adjective. And crawl is an action verb. So now, next B to G. You are going to solve it yourself. Then the next part is listening and speaking. In this, you need to read these words aloud. And there is a listening exercise given. Please practice that also. And now in the composition part, what would it be like to live in the Amundsen Scott ice station for a year? Discuss this with your partner and make some notes. Think about the darkness, staying indoors, etc. and where you live now and more. The last part is write about this in your exercise book. So that is an assignment for you, an imaginative essay. You just think about it and you need to write it in your own words. I hope the chapter is clear to all of you. Any queries, please do contact me. Thank you. See you in the next class.